So back in April, I bought some shares of Baidu and made it a new position in my portfolio. My cost average was around $214 per share, which at the time was a 35% drop from its high. But since then, I've seen the stock travel down to as low as $179 per share and back up to its current price of $204 per share. If you watched the previous video on Baidu, you would have seen my two DCF valuations that valued the company anywhere between $220 per share to $245 per share, depending on how comfortable you are with a 12% or 15% 5-year growth rate. I personally considered this valuation to be very conservative, leaving room for upside both in terms of the expected growth of the business and the estimated terminal value of the business in year 5. And so now at this point, I'm considering adding some more Baidu stock to my portfolio. The original purchase only made up around 2% exposure, but the fundamental reason is that I think this is a stock that is very much undervalued and it offers similar upsides to the likes of Alibaba and Tencent, its Chinese peers, in terms of receiving certain early stage assets or segments of the business which have a potential to be huge for free. So for my updated thesis on Baidu, I want to really focus on the non-advertising business, the AI portion of the business, which is the smallest portion today, making up approximately 11% of revenues, but like I say, has the potential to be the biggest and will likely outgrow the core business by around 2024. So here in their most recent prospectus, because they did do an offering back in March, they had to tell us about what they think their strengths are, but more importantly, their strategy. So their strategies to grow the business. Where is the value lying for shareholders? And we can see there are 3 points here. First of all, continue to invest in technology. Now, this is quite broad because they are a technology company overall, but I think what they mean by invest in technology is their non-advertising part of the business, the real AI technology portion. And they have $25 billion in cash on the balance sheet to do that. So if they can reinvest that at a fairly high rate with a $71 billion market cap, we're going to see a lot of value as investors. Next was continue to scale our AI cloud. Now, cloud is an industry globally that's growing at a rapid pace, but if we look at Asia and China specifically, it's growing at a fast double-digit rate year over year, and Baidu are a top 3 cloud provider in China today. So this is a business that could see significant growth, just as Alibaba's is, just as Tencent's is in China as well. And I think it's something that will really deliver value to shareholders over the long term. Lastly was further develop and commercialize the intelligent driving and other growth initiatives. Now, this I feel is one of the most important growth drivers for Baidu and its shareholders as well, because it's an area that they have been investing heavily into over the past decade with not much by way of returns. But that's all starting to change now, and the heavy investments into R&D in this field and growing the portion of the business is starting to bear fruit. Now, they are a front runner in the autonomous driving and robo-taxi industry with the vast amounts of driving data they've managed to collect over the years and the full product line they now have of self-driving vehicles. So this is very compelling as an investor looking for growth, because the robo-taxi and ride-hailing industry in China is expected to reach $224 billion in revenues by 2025, according to China Insights. So even a fairly modest percentage of market share would double Baidu's entire business's current revenues, which shouldn't be taken lightly at all, as Baidu currently hold more patents and licenses in this area than any other company in China, and their product lines are also being tested in major cities for robo-taxi use. And so my theory is that very soon, these non-advertising segments of the business is going to outgrow Baidu Core in the next 3 to 4 years. And it seems like the CEO of the business, Robin Li, thinks exactly the same thing. On a recent investor call, he said, when you couple this with the robust growth of our AI business, the non-advertising revenues could possibly exceed advertising revenue within Baidu Core in the next 3 years. The CEO of the business has said that. And there's a huge delta between the two at the moment. So it does really suggest a lot of growth for the overall business, but specifically those non-advertising segments of the business. If we take a quick look at the TAM growth rates, or TAM expected growth rates for all of these industries that they're in on the non-advertising portions of the business, you start to see anywhere between 23 upwards to around 45% compound annual growth rates up until 2025. That's what's expected. And it's not just growth rates in terms of percentage terms. If we look at the total addressable market number for all of these industries, they heavily outweigh the online marketing or advertising total addressable market within China, which tells us as investors that if Baidu can capture a very modest percentage of that total addressable market, 1.5 trillion US dollars in 2025, we as shareholders will see a lot of value and there will be a lot of growth. And so if we start to take a wider view of the company, and more importantly, the stock and its current valuation, we see a company that's selling at around a 20 times PE, 4% free cash flow yield. Very cheap for the market that we're in at the moment. And you compare this to the 35% on average TAM expansion, TAM growth rate that they're going to see over the next 5 years, with an underlying growth rate in the economy that they're sitting in of around 8%, for me, I start to see an asymmetric bet. And asymmetric bets on the upside are exactly the type of investment that I want to be making. So analysts are predicting somewhere in the region of a 12 to 15% growth rate. Here in this model, I've got 12%, getting us to around 28 billion of revenue in 2025. But like we saw in some of the previous slides, their total addressable market is going to be reaching near to the $1 trillion mark. So this revenue number has a lot of upside left in it. If they can gain a big capture of some of the new markets that they're moving into, especially the AI-driven markets, then this revenue number is going to be a lot larger than I've estimated it to be here in this model. Now, some additional bits that make me like Baidu stock as an investment. Obviously, we spoke about the cash they have on hand at the moment, 25 billion that they're going to be reinvesting into some really high growing portions of the business. I think this is a big factor for me, especially given that the market cap's only 70 billion, and $70 billion in the grand scheme of things today isn't a huge company. Again, I'll talk about the TAM, that $1 trillion TAM opportunity. A $70 billion market cap seems very small relative to that. And so even with all that conservativeness, we still come to a conclusion that the stock is undervalued here because the price has gone up a bit since the last video. It's saying it's around 8 to 10% undervalued. If we move to a more bullish scenario that I spoke about, so we hint at around 15% growth rate, margins stay the same. And by the way, this is a cash flowing machine. This is a business that can spit out a very high amount of free cash flow on an annual basis. And this DCF here shows that the stock is currently around 20% undervalued. But again, I think with a 15% growth rate, we could be being conservative here. I'm not saying for 1 minute that the advertising portion, which makes up the largest bit, and IQE as well, is going to grow at larger than 10, 15%. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think, although there is some uncertainty in the AI portion of the business, it has the potential to grow at a much quicker pace than 15%. I think it's growing at around 70% quarter over quarter and year over year at the moment. So posting huge numbers. It's already a $1 billion business. And once it starts to scale, we're going to see it affect the company's revenue amounts more than we have done previously. And so for Baidu, over the next 5 years, my IRR calculation is around a 19% annual rate of return from where we are now, which is, a bit of a margin of safety. Of course, my hurdle rate is around 15%, but where we're being so conservative on this, or I feel we're being so conservative and leaving room for the upside, also the asymmetry that's involved in the business's valuation at the moment versus what the potential growth rates are, I think we're leaving quite a big margin of safety. And this 19% IRR is probably on the bottom end of what you could expect over the next 5 years. So in summary, I think it's a good stock to buy. I think it's one of the best stocks available in the market in terms of the potential for good upside, and I will be adding more of it to my portfolio probably today. And so that just about wraps up this video, guys. Just a quick update on Baidu. Tell you why I'm looking at buying some more of the stock and why I feel it has very good upside for potential investors today. If you haven't watched that previous video on Baidu, the 2 previous videos where I go into their business in a lot more detail, a lot more well-rounded view of Baidu, then go ahead and watch that before you make any judgments on this valuation here, because here I was just giving an update and talking really about what I think the growth driver is for the next few years. This template here, this valuation with the IRR calculation and the bullish valuation is going to be available on the Patreon page. So go ahead and check out the Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel. You will also get access to our Discord community as well, where we're active every day on that and discuss all of the buys and sells that I do and buys and sells that everyone else on the Patreon does as well. So go and check that out if you're interested. And if you could leave a like also on the video, I'd greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on Baidu. But until next time, I will see you all in the next video. Good luck with your investments.